What you inherited without knowing. Prologue. You didn't come into this life empty. You arrived already marked by stories you never heard, by grief you never lived, by patterns you never chose. And yet, somehow, they choose you every time. Before your first cry echoed into this world, something older had already taken its place beside you, a silent companion, a hidden weight, a destiny whispered through generations. Your name may be yours, but your fate might not be. The way you love, the fears you carry, the dreams that collapse just before they bloom. Could they be echoes, repetitions of lives unfinished, of souls unresolved? What if the shame that tightens your chest belongs to a grandmother whose voice was silenced? What if the rage that surges in you was once your father's, or his father's father's? What if your sadness is not weakness, but a message delivered across bloodlines, waiting for you to listen? This isn't just psychology. It isn't imagination. This is the soul's terrain, where the past is not gone, only hidden, and where healing means seeing what has long been excluded. Family constellations reveal this invisible web. They expose the loyalties that bind us in silence, the unspoken contracts we make out of love, to suffer as they suffered, to fail as they failed, to carry what they could not release. These are not metaphors. They are energetic truths, mapped and revealed through the work of Bert Hellinger, who uncovered that behind every persistent pain often stands a forgotten ancestor, a broken bond, or a love that took on too much. And now as you listen, something in you may begin to stir, not in your mind, but in your bones, in your blood, in the space between your heartbeats. Because deep down, you already know this isn't just your story. You were born into a soul agreement, to bring light to what was left in shadow, to bring peace where there was only silence, to end what was never yours to begin with. You are not here to carry the pain. You are here to release it. Let the remembrance begin. Chapter 1. The invisible field of the family soul. There are forces that guide your life from beneath the surface, ancient, unseen forces that do not speak in words, but in echoes, patterns, and repetitions. They move like shadows behind your choices, shaping your desires, your fears, your relationships, even your fate. And yet, you rarely pause to ask, where do they come from? Bert Hellinger called this force the family soul. Not just your individual soul, but the collective spirit of your lineage. It is not abstract. It is alive, and it remembers everything. Every family is a constellation, a system held together by blood, by emotion, by fate. Within that system live the stories of everyone who came before you, the ones you remember and the ones you don't, the ones who were honored and the ones who were forgotten, the ones who were loved openly and the ones who had to carry their love in silence. And this soul, this living field of your ancestry has laws, ancient laws, laws that move deeper than any moral code, laws that are not decided by the ego, but by the unconscious order of life itself. The first law is belonging. No one may be excluded, no matter their actions, no matter their shame, no matter how painful their story was. Every soul that has touched the family system, through birth, through loss, through love, has a place. And if that place is denied, the field responds. Joy Manet writes that the family soul is like an organism. It seeks balance. And when someone is pushed out of the system, someone else will unconsciously be drawn to take their place. A grandchild will carry the grief of a grandmother she never met. A son will carry the guilt of a father who could not speak of his own. This is called entanglement, and it is not chosen. It is inherited. It happens not through logic, but through a deeper form of love, a blind love, a child's love, because the soul does not care about good or bad. It cares about belonging, about restoring wholeness to the field. And when the field is incomplete, when a person has been erased from memory, rejected, denied, or shamed, The soul does not forget. It whispers, "Someone must remember, someone must carry." So we carry what is not ours. We live out our lives that echo the unfinished stories of those who came before us. We fall into depression that has no clear origin. We choose partners who feel strangely familiar. We sabotage our joy. We repeat patterns again and again and think they are ours, but they are not. They are residues of unspoken truths, unfinished emotions, souls who are still waiting to be seen. In a constellation, this invisibility becomes visible. Representatives are chosen, strangers who step into the space and take on the energy of your family members. They do not know your story, yet something begins to move through them. A woman playing your sister begins to cry without knowing why. A man playing your grandfather clenches his fists and looks away, refusing to make eye contact. The room becomes charged. The air thickens. This is not performance. It is not a theatre. It is the resonance of the field. According to Rupert Sheldrake's idea of morphic resonance, all systems, biological, cultural, and ancestral, have some form of memory. Today's world is structured by that recollection. It is a part of the energy field. You can feel that field too, witnessed, rearranged. When the system is revealed, truths emerge, not spoken truths but embodied ones. You see how love became entangled with sacrifice, how someone died and was never mourned, how a child was lost and never mentioned again, how an exclusion in the past created a repetition in the present. And something shifts, not through force but through recognition. The excluded is given a place, the forgotten is named, the burden is seen and returned with love, and in that moment, healing begins. A quiet healing, a sacred healing, because healing in family constellations does not mean rewriting the past, it means honoring it, not judging, not fixing, not analyzing, but bowing, saying, "I see you, I honor your fate, and I give back what is not mine to carry." When that happens, the field responds. The pattern loosens, the entanglement dissolves, and the soul is set free. This is not psychology. This is not storytelling. This is the language of the soul. And once it begins to speak, it never forgets how. Chapter 2. Transgenerational Karma, the soul that repeats. There is a force that moves through time, crossing borders, languages, and lifetimes. It does not care for years or dates. It is older than your memory, deeper than your name. It is called karma, but not the kind that punishes. This karma is not a divine sentence. It is a soul's longing for balance, for truth, for love to flow where it was once broken. Bert Hellinger never used the word karma lightly, but he saw the same patterns the mystics had always seen. When something remains unresolved in a family, it echoes, it waits, and then it returns, not always in the same form, but always with the same vibration. That which is left in darkness seeks the light, not for revenge, but for completion. This is why children unconsciously take on the pain of their ancestors, not because they choose to, because the family soul calls for it. Because somewhere in the roots there is a silence so deep it vibrates through the generations, a silence like a mother who lost a child and never spoke of it again, a man who betrayed the family and was erased from memory, a grandmother who suffered in silence, who swallowed her truth so the others could survive, a war, a migration, a suicide, a shame. And then, decades later, a girl is born with sadness in her eyes she can't explain. A boy grows up afraid to speak, without knowing why. A woman finds herself repeating her mother's heartbreak, even when she swore she never would. A man fears becoming a father, though he dreams of it. This is transgenerational karma. This is the soul that repeats what was not healed, because the soul is loyal. Joy Manet writes that we inherit not only genetic codes, but emotional residues. Our very psyche is shaped by what happened before we arrived. Our unconscious absorbs the stories we were never told. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Family Constellations is the art of bringing to light what has been driving you from the shadows, of realizing that what you thought was your destiny might be your grandmother's grief. The patterns are not accidents, they are messages. The same illness appears in every generation, the same type of relationship that collapses again and again, the same fear, the same addiction, the same silence. At first it looks like a curse, but when you see with the eyes of the soul you realize it's a calling. The field is saying, it is time. See what has been hidden. Speak what has not been said. Love what has not been loved. There are no villains in the family soul. No one is condemned, not even those who wounded others, because every soul belongs. And every wound, no matter how deep, was born in a larger context of love, trauma, and survival. The soul doesn't judge. The soul repeats until someone wakes up. And that someone is you. The one who listens to the silence. The one who feels more than they can explain. The one who sees patterns that others ignore. The one who doesn't want to repeat, but doesn't yet know how to stop. You are the one who chose, perhaps long before birth, to come into this family, into this system, not to carry the pain, but to release it. But to release it, you must first see it. And to see it, you must be willing to feel what others could not, to honor what others forgot, to give voice to what others buried. This is why Family Constellations is not merely therapeutic, it is sacred. It is a ceremony of remembrance, not with words, with presence. You step into the field, you invite the souls. You open yourself to what wants to emerge, not as a savior, not as a judge, but as a witness. You look at your mother, and you see her mother behind her. You look at your father, and you feel the fear of the men who came before him. You look at yourself and finally understand. This pain is not personal, it is ancestral. But because it has reached you, you can give it light. You begin to speak the words your lineage never said. I see you. I know you suffered. I honor your fate. And I no longer need to carry it. And something ancient shifts. The chain of repetition loosens. The soul finds rest. You are not healing alone. When you heal, the ones who came before you sigh in relief. And the ones who come after you walk lighter. This is not magic. It is resonance. The morphic field reorganizes itself when truth is spoken, when what was entangled is lovingly separated. You do not need to fix your family. You only need to see it with love. Because love, when it sees clearly, no longer needs to repeat. And that is how karma transforms into freedom. Chapter 3. The Law of Belonging. No soul can be forgotten. There is a sacred law that governs every family system, whether we are aware of it or not. It is not written in books or taught in school. It is older than tradition, deeper than culture. It is whispered in blood and remembered in dreams. And the law is this: every soul has a place. Every person who has touched the family field, through birth, death, love, abandonment, betrayal, or sacrifice, has a right to belong. Whether they were welcomed or rejected, celebrated or erased, whether they died before their name was ever spoken, the field does not forget them. Only the mind does. And what the mind forgets, the soul repeats. This is the most silent form of injustice, not what is remembered, but what is hidden. Not what is spoken, but what is swallowed. Families bury their dead with their names unspoken. They silence the stories that shame them. They edit the past to protect the future. But the soul is not fooled. It keeps the memory alive, not in language but in vibration. What is denied does not disappear. It sinks, it hides, and then it echoes. The mother who gave a child away. The uncle who disappeared and was never mentioned again. The sister who died at birth and was never mourned. The first love was lost in silence. The ancestor whose name was only spoken in whispers. The man who was excluded because he was different. The woman who was punished for her freedom. All of them still belong. The soul does not operate by moral standards. It does not ask who was good or bad, who was right or wrong. It only asks who has been forgotten, who has been cast out, Who is still waiting for a place at the table of the living? And when someone is excluded, a child from a later generation may unconsciously offer their life to bring them back. Not in words, in symptoms, in relationships that fail, in identities that feel foreign, in sadness that clings, in a destiny that is not theirs. They are saying, without knowing, if he cannot be seen, I will carry him. If she were not allowed to live her truth, I would suffer in her name. If he was denied, I will fail as he did, so he is not alone. This is not logic, it is love. A love so loyal it becomes invisible. A love so innocent it sacrifices joy to restore balance. A love so deep it tries to resurrect the dead through repetition. But no one needs to carry what is not theirs when the soul is seen. When the family system is opened, gently, respectfully, ritually, and the lost are invited back in, something ancient exhales. The silence begins to lift. The burden begins to release. And what once caused pain now brings peace. To bring someone back is not to justify what they did. It is to remember that they too were shaped by pain, that they too were children once, that they too carried someone else's fate. When you place a forgotten soul back into the circle, it is not for them alone, it is for the living. Because the system cannot flow freely until everyone is acknowledged, until the fabric of belonging is whole again. This is the invisible wound in so many lives, the sense of not fitting in, of carrying guilt without cause, of feeling displaced, haunted by something unspoken. Often this root lies not in childhood, but in ancestry, in someone who was never given their rightful place, in an ancestor who died unnamed, in a betrayal that was never healed, in a silence that never stopped echoing, and so we seek therapy, guidance, escape. But what the soul truly longs for is reconciliation, not externally, but inwardly. A movement of the heart that says, I see what others did not, I restore what others broke, I remember what others tried to forget, and suddenly the system breathes again. The child stops carrying the grief of the great-grandfather. The woman finds herself no longer repeating the mother's abandonment. The man begins to walk a path of his own, not dictated by shame, and the soul, no longer tangled in the pain of the past, begins to rise. This is the quiet miracle of this work. Not that it changes history, but that it redeems it, that it gives love a new direction, one that flows forward instead of backward. To belong is not a luxury, it is a birthright. And when belonging is restored, even the dead find peace. You may feel them, not as ghosts but as calm, not as fear but as strength, not as wounds but as wisdom. Because when the system is whole, the ancestors become allies. The past becomes a foundation, not a prison, and your path becomes your own. But first, someone must see. Someone must bow. Someone must restore the circle. And perhaps that someone is you. Chapter 4. The body remembers what the family forgot. You may think that your body belongs only to you, that it is a vessel, a form, a biological machine designed to carry your life. But the body is not just flesh. It is memory. It is ritual. It is ancestry. Every gesture, every tension, every illness that visits your cells could be carrying a message from a past you never lived, but to which your blood still listens. The body does not lie. It cannot forget what the mind has silenced. It holds the cries that were never released, the grief that was not mourned, the rage that had no permission to erupt, the fear that generations swallowed for survival. In this sacred instrument we call my body resides the entire echo of the family system. Unprocessed emotions find shelter in muscle memory. Secrets translate themselves into posture. Repressed histories find refuge in the nervous system. And then one day, the body speaks. Not in words, but in fatigue that has no medical cause, in chronic pain that resists all treatments, in autoimmune conditions that feel like betrayal from within, in inexplicable panic in safe places, in an inner trembling that no one else sees. You go to doctors, you do the tests, you try everything, and yet something remains. Something persists, as if the symptom was trying to be heard, not cured, and perhaps it is. What if the illness is not the problem but the messenger? What if the tension is not your fault but a signal? What if your body is replaying a moment from a life not your own, a trauma unspoken from someone long gone, but still present? The body remembers what the family tried to forget. When a child is born, they do not arrive blank. They arrive charged, imprinted with the frequency of their lineage. They breathe in more than oxygen. They breathe in sorrow, silence, exile, shame, longing, and love. Always love. But when love has been wounded, when it was denied, sacrificed, or silenced, the body becomes the altar where that love continues to kneel. A clenched jaw might hold the scream of a great-grandmother. A twisted spine may be bowed under the guilt of an ancestor. A heart that races may still be running from the war that never ended. This is not fantasy. It is the language of soul through sensation. The physical is the last frontier where the soul tries to express what could not be said in time. What the family represses, the body embodies. But here lies the miracle. If the body remembers pain as it also remembers love, it holds not only wounds, but codes. Not only trauma, but wisdom. You may be carrying in your chest the strength of a woman who endured the impossible. In your bones, the dignity of a man who stood tall in silence. In your hands, the tenderness of generations who knew how to give, even in lack. You are not just a continuation of pain. You are a continuation of sacred survival. But to awaken that inner knowing, you must listen. Not with your mind, with your breath, with your skin, with the subtle shifts that happen when you close your eyes and ask, what in me is not mine? What symptom is a story waiting to be told? What part of me is still holding someone else's tears? Sometimes healing begins not with doing, but with honoring, with placing your hand over the place that aches and whispering, I see you, I'm ready to listen. In Family Constellations, healing does not come from explanation, it comes from placement, from restoring order to what has been disordered, from acknowledging the hidden, from bowing to the weight instead of fighting it, from saying to the pain, you belong, and I now choose to give you rest. The moment you give voice to the unspoken, the body shifts, not always instantly, but deeply. Sometimes it takes a ritual, sometimes a dream, sometimes a constellation where, for the first time, the soul of a lost brother is given a name, or a silenced ancestor is placed back into the circle, and the body relaxes, the symptom fades, the breath deepens, because what was excluded has finally been seen. What was rejected has finally been received. Your body was never the enemy. It is the sacred ground where your soul and your lineage meet. Do not curse your pain. Ask it who it belongs to. Ask it what it remembers. Ask it what it needs to complete so that you can finally live. Because when the body no longer carries the burdens of the past, it becomes the temple for your true destiny. And in that temple, you are no longer a repetition. You are the one who returns everything to its rightful place. Chapter 5. The field remembers everything. There is a place beyond the visible, where names lose importance and roles dissolve into energy. It is not a place you can walk into with your feet, but one you enter with the stillness of your presence. Some call it the morphic field, others speak of the soul of the family. But no matter the name, the mystery is the same. There is an invisible intelligence that binds us all. A sacred web where nothing is forgotten, where every exclusion echoes, where every imbalance seeks to return to harmony. In this field, the past is not behind you. It is all around you. It pulses in the now. Because the soul does not measure time in years. It measures in truths. This is why your pain may not belong to your life. Why your fears do not begin with your childhood, why your patterns are not errors but messages, because something, someone, forgotten, is trying to return home through you. The field remembers, even when the family does not, when a child is aborted and never named, when a sibling dies and is never spoken of again, when a father is betrayed by his own blood, when a mother loves in silence and dies in bitterness, when an ancestor commits a crime that no one forgives, when a whole generation is erased by war, famine, or migration, the field does not close the door. It waits, it vibrates, it rearranges itself across generations, until someone is born sensitive enough to feel the imbalance, someone who lives what others suppressed, someone who becomes the living bridge between what was and what must be restored. And so, without knowing, you begin to carry. Not by choice, but by resonance. You walk through life with inherited shadows, draped over your shoulders like invisible cloaks. You carry the loneliness of the forgotten, the guilt of the unatoned, the exile of the outcast, the longing of those who died too soon, but not to suffer them again, to bring them back into the circle, to place them where they belong, to say the words no one said, "You are part of us. You are not the mistake. You are not the shame. You belong." In the energetic field of the family, belonging is not a concept, it is law. And when someone is pushed out, the field compensates. It entangles the innocent with the excluded, pulling a grandchild into the fate of a great-uncle, making a daughter fall in love with abandonment, because a great-grandmother was left behind, compelling a man to sabotage his success, because his lineage equates achievement with betrayal. This is not logic. It is the magnetic pull of unhealed memory, the echo of a soul crying out from the depths of the system, "Remember me, let me in, give me peace." When we enter the constellation, we step into that field. We do not analyze, we feel. We surrender to what wants to emerge. Representatives begin to move. Eyes meet. Words unspoken for generations come forth as whispers. And suddenly, what was hidden becomes visible. What was tangled begins to loosen. One man kneels for the first time before his father. A woman turns toward the mother she never accepted. A child sees the sibling who died before birth and says, "I see you now, and I take my rightful place after you," and the field shifts. No one needs to be convinced. The body knows. The soul sighs. The tears that flow are not just yours. They are ancient. They are collective. They are sacred. This is the healing that does not come from knowledge but from recognition, not from explanation, but from truth embodied. Because when the field is rebalanced, when every soul is seen, when the sacred order is restored, love begins to flow again. Not the sentimental love of stories, but the fierce, pure love of life itself. A love that does not cling, but liberates. A love that does not control, but allows. A love that does not repeat, but renews. And that love, once entangled, now moves forward. You do not need to understand everything. The soul does not need explanation. It needs space. It needs silence. It needs truth. You may have come to this path, searching for answers about your pain, your family, your destiny. But what you are really discovering is the ancient map beneath your life, a pattern written not in ink, but in vibration. And that map leads to one place only, reconnection, with those who came before, with the parts of you that carry their voice, with the living field that surrounds your every breath. You are not lost, you are not cursed, you are not broken. You are the one the field chose, to remember, to restore, to love again. Chapter 6. The Invisible Vows That Shape Your Fate. There are vows we make without speaking, pacts written in silence, oaths signed in the invisible chambers of the heart, and though no one heard them, they shape the way we walk through life. They are not conscious. They are not made with words, but with love. A kind of love that would rather suffer than betray. A love that chooses repetition over separation. A love that bows before pain and says, "I will carry this for you." The child senses what the system cannot say. The loss never grieved, the shame never cleansed, the betrayal never forgiven, the grief that thickens the air like smoke. And so, the child makes a promise. If you could not cry, I will weep your tears. If you could not live freely, I will limit myself. If you had to die too soon, I will never fully live. If you were cast out, I will stand in your place. And with that vow, the soul binds itself to a fate not its own. Not because of karma, not because of punishment, but because of love that does not yet know another way. These are not the curses of ancestors. They are echoes of devotion. They are the soul's desperate attempt to return order, to a system that has forgotten how to breathe. But there is a cost. The vow made in silence becomes a pattern in adulthood. You push away love because somewhere you carry the memory of a mother who lost hers. You sabotage abundance because to succeed would mean leaving behind a brother who died in failure. You numb your joy because your blood remembers the laughter. That was stolen in a time of war. You do not know why you feel disconnected, why you attract the same wounds, why your body speaks of pain your mind cannot explain. And yet, deep within, a part of you whispers, "This is not mine." And that is where healing begins. To untie a soul from the vow it made long ago, you must step into a deeper truth. A truth more ancient than guilt, more powerful than loyalty. Love is not sacrifice. True love does not require suffering. It does not ask us to carry the dead on our backs. It does not ask us to dim our light so others are not offended. It does not bind, it liberates. But first, we must see. We must see the vow we made. We must name it. We must bow to it, not to keep it, but to release it. In the sacred space of constellation, you may find yourself standing in the role of your grandmother, or looking into the eyes of a man you've never known, but whose death shaped your family's silence. And as you stand there, you feel the weight, the pull, the bond, and you speak the words that break the chain. With all the love in my heart, I give this back to you. Your fate is yours, I honor it, I leave it with you, and I take only what is mine, my life, my path, my destiny. And something shifts. It may be subtle, like a breeze in a still room, or a wave of tears that cleanse what no therapy ever reached, or a lightness in the chest that feels like permission to breathe again. This is not rejection, it is reverence. You are not abandoning them. You are trusting them with their own journey. You are saying, I love you enough to stop saving you, because no soul is truly served by being carried. What was needed was not sacrifice, but presence, not repetition, but recognition. And once the vow is released, the soul begins to unfold in its own time, not rushed, not forced, but like a flower that was waiting for the right season to open, and life begins to return. You make decisions without fear of betrayal. You follow joy without guilt. You love without the shadow of the past hovering between your hands. You become who you were before the vow, before the soul tied its light to another's pain. This is why healing does not always look like a miracle. Sometimes it looks like ordinary peace, like waking up without the old ache, like speaking your truth without trembling, like no longer needing to prove, to fix, to atone. You did not come here to repeat what was unfinished. You came here to close the circle, to bless what came before, and to choose finally to live, because the most sacred vow you can make is not one of sacrifice, but of return. Return to your path. Return to your light. Return to the life that has been waiting for you since before you were born. Chapter 7. Take your place and everything will begin to move. There is a place that belongs only to you, a place no one else can fill, not your brother, not your mother, not even the ancestor whose life you unconsciously mirrored. It is the place you were born into, ordained not by society but by the soul, not assigned by merit but by order. And when you do not stand in that place, your life drifts, your roots float, your path bends toward what is not yours to live. To take your place is to accept, fully and with reverence, your position in the great river of life. It is to say, I am the daughter of this woman and this man. I come after them, not before. I take what was given, and I let go of what was not. I belong, not above, not below, but exactly where I am. So many of us wander, not because we are lost, but because we are displaced. We carry our parents' wounds as if we were their parents. We act like siblings to our children. We become partners to those who were never ours. We live fates that were not designed for us, and the soul, patient and still, waits for us to return. In the family soul, order is sacred, and the disorder, however subtle, disrupts everything. The first child who acts like the youngest who tries to fix what the first could not, the child who replaces a sibling who died, the woman who becomes the emotional spouse of her father, the man who shoulders the grief of 3 generations of mothers. No one teaches this. No one intends this. But the field records every shift, and until we return to our rightful place, the system cannot breathe freely. To take your place is not to take power. It is to take permission. Permission to live your own life and let others live theirs. It is not a declaration of separation, but of sacred boundary. It is to say with clarity and love, I am your child, not your caretaker. I am your sibling, not your replacement. I am a soul, not a savior. When you take your place, you begin to feel the earth beneath you, not metaphorically, but truly. Your breath deepens. Your choices feel aligned. Your relationships begin to lose the invisible weight they carried. The push-pull dissolves, because you are no longer carrying more than your share. You stop looking for what was never yours to receive. You stop trying to repay debts that were never yours to settle. You stop saving people who never asked to be saved. You let the system breathe. You let love do its work. You let life flow again. And sometimes this act is so simple, so subtle, that others may not even notice. But your soul knows. The moment you speak the words that the field was waiting to hear, this is my place. I take it. I do not leave it. I honor it. And then, everything begins to move, like water, finally finding its riverbed, like music finding its key, like time exhaling after holding its breath for too long. Suddenly, your children stop repeating what you carried. Your body relaxes into its own rhythm. Opportunities arrive, not from effort, but from alignment, because life responds to order. Even the dead rest easier when you are in your place, because no one is standing in their shadow anymore. No one is trying to compensate for what was lost. No one is holding guilt in their name. They can go, you can stay. And from your place you can bless what came before, without becoming it. You can love your lineage, without being bound by it. You can say, I see all of you. I bow to your fates. And now from my rightful place I choose my own. This is not disloyalty. It is the deepest loyalty there is, to the truth of the soul. Because when you take your place, you don't separate yourself. You unify the system. You become a root, a bridge, a bearer of light. You stop echoing. You start living. You stop repeating. You start creating. Not from resistance, but from resonance. Not to escape the past, but to honor it through transformation. Because the past does not need to be corrected, only seen. And once it is seen, you are free. So today, now, in this breath, ask yourself, where have I been standing that was not mine? Whose life have I been trying to fix? Whose place have I taken without knowing? And then gently, tenderly, with reverence, step back, step aside, step forward into the only place you were ever meant to stand, your own. Chapter 8. When the past becomes light. There comes a moment in every path of remembrance where silence becomes the most faithful companion, not the silence of absence, but the silence of presence. It is the stillness that follows after the soul has spoken, after the pain has been witnessed, after the threads have been untangled. It is the pause where integration begins. You have seen what you were not meant to carry. You have returned what was never yours. You have honored the ones who came before, not by repeating them, but by releasing them. And now, something opens, not loud, not dramatic, but deep, subtle, like the cracking of a seed under the soil, like a faint glow rising from a long-buried root. The stories are still there. The memories remain. But they no longer chain you to the old vibration. They no longer define your identity. They become light, ancestral light. The father who disappeared is no longer a wound. He is a lesson in presence. The mother who could not love you becomes a gateway to self-love. The silence of your lineage becomes an invitation to voice your truth. You begin to see what before was hidden, that the pain you inherited was never there to punish you. It was there to awaken you. It was a seed of consciousness, a riddle, a prayer, and now as you live through it, feel through it, walk beyond it, you realize it never wanted to own you. It wanted to free you, because every lineage longs for evolution. Every system wants to be whole. And when one of its members dares to do something different, to feel what others couldn't, to speak what others silenced, to choose joy where others chose loyalty to pain, the entire field begins to shift. You are not just healing yourself. You are recalibrating the memory of the system. You are giving your ancestors a new voice, one that sings instead of cries, one that blesses instead of binds. And this shift is real. It may not be seen in the mirror, but it is felt in your breath. It is seen in your children. It echoes in your choices. You begin to live not from reaction, but from creation. You are no longer a puppet of the past. You are the poet of the future, and perhaps for the first time, you feel light. Not because the story has disappeared, but because you are no longer carrying it alone. The system supports you now. It flows with you, because you have stepped into harmony. You have accepted your life, and by doing so, life begins to accept you back. You will still grieve. You will still remember. But the grief will be clean. The memory will be luminous. Because pain, when integrated, becomes strength, and the ancestral wound, when healed, becomes the ancestral gift. You will begin to notice things you never did before. How your body softens in places that used to be armored. How your decisions feel guided by something greater. How synchronicities multiply, as if the universe had just begun to speak your language, because in truth, it always was. But now, your signal is clear. You are no longer broadcasting the frequency of survival. You are radiating the frequency of truth, and the world responds. You meet people who reflect your inner shift. You attract experiences that nourish your growth. Your relationships, though not perfect, become more honest, more alive, more sacred. This is what it means to become the medicine of your lineage, not to be perfect, not to fix everyone, but to live your truth so deeply that others begin to remember their own. You become a lighthouse, not by intention but by presence, and even when others do not understand, even when your family of origin resists your changes, you bless them, because you know they too carry stories. They too are doing the best they can. With what was passed down, you no longer need them to change, because you have. And in that change, quiet, sacred, undeniable, the past becomes light. The names you once held with pain, you now speak with grace. The memories that once haunted you, you now honor with tenderness. The chaos that once ruled your inner world becomes a compass for transformation, because you have remembered, you have realigned, and now you walk not in reaction to your past, but in communion with your soul. You are no longer the wound. You are the healer. You are no longer the echo. You are the voice. You are the one your ancestors dreamed of, not to carry their pain, but to turn it into gold. Chapter 9. Rewriting the Pattern with Love. There is a moment after the remembering, after the returning, after the releasing, where you are asked one final question by life itself. How will you love now? Not as your mother loved, not as your grandfather failed to love, not as your lineage was taught to love through silence, fear, or sacrifice, but how will you love now that you see clearly? Because if you've come this far, if you've touched the roots of pain and seen their ancestral names, then you stand at the edge of a great power, the power to rewrite the pattern with love, not just for you, but for everyone who comes after you, for the children in your home, for the children still in your dreams, and for the parts of you that still feel like a child inside. You see, the greatest healing is not found in knowing what happened, but in how you choose to live differently after knowing. You no longer pass the wound down through reaction. You don't echo the scream of your father. You don't collapse like your mother did. You don't mold yourself to be loved, because love now flows from within you. And when you catch yourself mid-pattern, When the old pain tries to speak through you, you breathe, you soften, you remember, I can choose again, because that is the true gift of consciousness. The power to respond rather than repeat, to pause before you shout, to hold before you shame, to name the fear before it becomes punishment, to witness your child's tears without confusing them with your own. This is how the pattern ends, not with rage, not with rebellion, but with reverence and radical love. You become the safe parent you never had, the forgiving voice your ancestors never heard, the truth teller your lineage was too afraid to be. And it begins in the smallest of moments, when you sit across from someone you love and say, I will not act out what I inherited. I will choose presence. It begins when you stop asking your partner to heal what your father broke, when you stop fearing closeness because your mother never held you, when you stop needing control because chaos lived in your childhood. It begins when you bless your triggers as guides, not enemies. When you see the shadow arise in your parenting or your partnership, and instead of becoming it, you bless it, witness it, and rise above it. This is spiritual maturity. This is ancestral evolution. This is how you become the ending to a story that needed closure for generations. Because in this moment you are not just a person. You are a bridge, a convergence point of timelines, a sacred intersection of past and future. And what flows through you flows forward. So give what your family line was starving for: love without condition, truth without blame, freedom without guilt. Be the one who holds the child's hand with a softness that says, you never have to carry what I did. Be the one who listens without projecting, who stays without controlling, who gives without losing the self. That is the true end of repetition, when love becomes more powerful than fear and presence more persistent than pain. You may still stumble, you may still echo, but now you notice, now you remember, and in remembering you rewrite. You become a field of new possibilities, a home where love is not confused with obedience, where discipline is not punishment, but sacred guidance, where emotions are not suppressed but honored, where connection is not survival but celebration. You no longer need to prove your worth, or shrink your light, or overcompensate for what was missing. You are no longer trying to redeem your mother's shame or your father's rage. You're not building a life just to contradict their choices. You are creating from soul, from truth, from love. And the children, yours or not, will feel this. They may not understand the journey you took, but they will feel the softness in your voice. They will notice the peace in your eyes. They will inherit not your trauma, but your transformation. That is how the past becomes blessing. That is how the future is cleansed. That is how love becomes legacy. So live your truth. Raise your children in light, love with presence, forgive without forgetting, teach without preaching, hold without gripping. Let your life be the prayer. That breaks every silent chain, and when you forget, because sometimes you will, come back to this truth. You are no longer the echo. You are the new song. Let it sing through you. Final chapter. You are the prayer that your lineage sent forward. You made it here, not by accident but by soul impulse, because something inside you knew, long before you pressed play, that there was a story within your story, a presence behind the pain, a pattern not yet yours to keep. And now that thread has been touched, that silence has been heard, that hidden inheritance has been seen. But this is not the end. This is the beginning of a new way of being, a new way of walking through the world, not as a reflection of what was unhealed, but as a conscious carrier of light. You are the prayer that your lineage sent forward, not to carry the weight, but to remember the truth. And now that you've remembered, life will speak to you differently. Dreams will deepen, relationships will shift, synchronicities will multiply. You will feel drawn, without knowing why, to the stories of your ancestors, to books that whisper of systemic healing, to paths that talk of energy, soul, lineage, and release. Follow that pull. Trust that whisper. It is your soul saying, this is your next step. Explore the unseen. Study the field. Read. Question. Seek. The soul loves to be remembered, and the more you remember, the more life opens its hidden doors, because healing your lineage was never just about you. It was about opening space for those who came before and for those who will come after, and you did that. So go now. Live differently. Speak your truth. Walk with reverence. And remember, you were never broken. You were chosen.